the title of this interview series is Political Futures. And your area is risk. And what I'm wondering about is the idea of perhaps having insurance. In other words, if we look around and we see all the different threats or all the different risks, and we have some money to spend on insurance, right? Where should we be investing of all of the risks that you've laid out and that you've thought about? Do you have any sense of priority? Or if I'm in charge of sort of mitigating these risks in some way and I can buy a little of insurance, where would you put your money?
If you could buy insurance that was actually well priced and effective,
yeah,
which of course
let's stipulate that.
Stipulate that.
That we can actually, that a few little insurance investments could make a difference.
Yeah, I'd like to insure my China risk, please.
Okay.
Because, frankly, the exposure for American corporations in China is extraordinary. Mm-hmm. They're doing huge amounts of manufacturing there. They're selling into that market. It is not all clear to me. I'm generally a believer that China grows. I could make an argument that it won't. I could make an argument that China is going to have serious problems over the next few years. But I'm a believer in the Chinese growth story. I am not a believer necessarily that the Chinese growth story means that we benefit as investors, as corporations, from Chinese growth.
Right.
In fact, I think the Chinese market will become increasingly inhospitable for foreign investment.
So that's a different position. And we just heard Neil Ferguson give a talk here at the Carnegie Council, and he was basically, if I understood him correctly, saying that the United States and China are locked together.
Well, I didn't know I was supposed to be coordinating with Ferguson. Next time
I
will
just
do that. It's not a problem.
But how would you respond to that? In other words, it's basically sink or swim together.
Well, I would first say that there
do you
is.
Disagree with that?
Well, I agree. I'll tell you, I agree with it strategically.
Yeah.
In other words, I think Russia. We've talked a lot about Russia. Russia is a relatively revisionist state on the security front. They do not see themselves as benefiting from the existing geopolitical order. They are prepared to provoke a certain amount of conflict to change that order for their benefit. The Chinese are not. The Chinese think that global stability with the present system suits them just fine. Leave them alone. Let them make more money and grow. So from that perspective, I think on things like North Korea, on Iran, on Israel, Palestine, on Iraq, the Chinese are generally more sympathetically disposed than the Russians are towards the West.
Right.
But if you ask me, does China, as the world's greatest carbon emitters, as the world's greatest marginal increase in demand for commodities across the board, as committed to supporting Chinese state-owned enterprises and national champions to become world leaders and world beaters, do I believe that that system is fundamentally tied at the hip to the United States? Absolutely not, and increasingly that will become self-evident. Mm-hmm. So that's where I want my insurance.
And if you're going to put all your marbles there, or are you going to spread it out around?
Well, I mean, if Ferguson is selling, I mean, I'll probably get a good price. So, I mean, first of all, I think that's a good way to play it. And what I want, I mean, that's the big one. Right. It's the big one. There are clearly other places that you'd like to see a little. I mean, on the security side, India become a bigger risk than you'd like it to be. Right. In the Gulf, I'd like a little Dubai insurance because we've got, this bubble growth, and we also have risk because of all of the Iranian financial transactions.
Right.
So in the Gulf, that's a place I'm a little concerned about.
What about energy security generally? Is that an area to be concerned with?
Oil prices. Less so with oil prices
down
where they are right
prices,
now.
Just access. I mean, obviously the market is important, but I mean, just having access to the energy that we're going to need.
Prices are related to access.
No, I know.
Right. So I'm saying, apparently, if the Saudis are saying that, even with cuts, you're at $45, apparently access isn't such a problem. I can go and buy. I mean, $1.70, $1.60 a gallon, I've got access.
So is it a good insurance investment to be, big money into alternative energy schemes, again, from the United States perspective?
Oh, from that perspective, yeah, I think that you've got to be a long-term player.
Right.
I mean, I am a fundamental believer long-term in nuclear energy, a fundamental believer in, doing a broad complex of alternative energies. I mean, do wind, do solar, do biofuels, with the full expectation that a number of these technologies will prove themselves for various reasons not to be viable or scalable, but some of them will take off really big.
Right.
I'm all in favor of that.
Right.
But you're going to take potentially an enormous amount of volatility in the near term. And people were not expecting that when you were in last year's environment of geopolitical concerns, not enough supply for everybody, and extraordinary global economic growth. We are now, 12 months later, even 6 months later, in a completely different environment.
Right. Is it a smart insurance play to be investing in international institutions? And what I mean by this is that we are going to have a new Secretary of State, Senator Clinton, soon to be Secretary Clinton. And if she follows the path of the first Clinton administration, her husband's administration, I mean, they were generally internationalists. I mean,
Yes.
they believed in building international institutions. I mean, to me, the unifying theme, if there was one, to the Clinton foreign policy was globalization.
I'm going to take a step back.
Was to build a global system.
I think
for
that
which the United States would support.
Structurally, we have had a group of Truman-era international institutions that were built for a 20th century geopolitical order.
Right.
They served that order extremely well. Mm-hmm. That order is gone.
Right.
It's increasingly gone. And no one has built new institutions since then. You're right, certainly, that the Clinton administration invested more in strengthening those institutions.
So the Obama administration should not, they should either think up or support new ones, or should they invest, or I'm just in terms of what to invest in.
Well, more importantly,
and is that a good insurance play?
They will invest more, I think, in existing institutions. I don't think that will get us very far. In other words, I don't think anyone is ready to create a new Security Council, but it's what's needed. I don't think anyone is ready yet to create a new non-proliferation treaty, but it's what's needed. I don't think anyone is ready to fundamentally change or expand NATO's agenda, but it's what's needed. We need 21st century institutions for 21st century global order, and I do not believe that the level of the crisis which we are presently experiencing is sufficiently great to force or require that sort of rebuilding.
So in other words, Secretary Clinton will be more of a bricklayer than an architect, right?
I think that's right.
Right? She's a good case lawyer.
And Rahm Emanuel,
right,
saying that this is sort of too great a crisis and opportunity.
Right. I think his quote was never. It was quoting FDR, who came in, I believe, and he said, "Never waste a crisis."
Was it Winston Churchill or was it FDR? I think it was Churchill.
I'm not sure.
Yeah. He's quoting someone.
All right. The idea, never waste a crisis because it's a great opportunity.
Yeah, and I think he's absolutely right.
Right.
But sadly, I do not believe this crisis will be seen as sufficiently great to be able to be taken advantage of.
Oh, it's because of its magnitude. I sort of agree with you, but I don't think it's not. I think the magnitude is there, but I don't think the imagination is there.
Well, I think it might well be both.
Yeah.
Because I think if the crisis were sufficiently great, you don't need imagination.
Right.
Right.
I'm trying to imagine when President-elect Obama was interviewing Senator Clinton for the job, and I wonder whether they were having a conversation of this type.
Do you think there was an interview?
I don't know. I presume there was.
She just kind of got in there.
That was it, maybe.
It came from nowhere, Clinton. I mean, you have
but these
to
are
wonder.
The questions that should be asked.
I have to say, what I worry about, I mean, you've got right now with Clinton and with Summers and with Geithner and with Gates, you have some of the best minds and experience possibly available. Right. It's a very big tent. Right. They don't all agree on a lot of things. And, one thing you have to give the Bush administration credit for, like on China policy, they may not have had the same level of capacity that the Obama folks did, but Paulson ran it.
Right.
It's his policy. Everybody got behind it.
Right.
In the Obama camp, you've got 5 or 6 serious folks, all of whom will think that they get a piece of China policy. Mm-hmm. Will we end up with less effective policy as a consequence of that? Mm-hmm. I think it's very possible that we will, especially given the level of distraction on domestic economic crisis.
Well, thank you for this tour of political futures. It sounds to me like the global financial crisis is the key element, and it plays itself out in a variety of ways. And thank you for exploring some of them with us. And I hope we'll have an opportunity to do this again next month.
My pleasure, Joel.
Thank you.